So this is your Lord of the Flies annotation guide, and first thing you need to understand about the novel is that it's an allegory. An allegory is a story where all of the elements of the story can be perceived or understood or interpreted in a different way as symbolic of something else. So this annotation guide will be a little bit different with that in mind. I'll give you the usual themes, symbols and motifs so you can understand the basics of the text, but you'll also be asked to consider the types of readings that you will take towards the text and another number of other things you'll consider during your reading of the text. So firstly, the themes. There are 4 themes. Firstly, leadership. So the children land on the island and the big question is who is the leader and who's going to seize control of the group, and also how the leaders will be formed amongst once they break up into smaller groups, as will inevitably happen. Second is power. Obviously you can have power without needing to be a leader of a group, and there's a number of different ways that power is wielded or that power is enacted in this text. The last 2 again are also linked: fear and corruption. So fear becomes an important part of the lives of the children and also the interactions between the groups of the children. And as you might expect, corruption seeps into their engagements and their interactions as they go through on their time on the island. So the motifs, the recurring symbolism throughout the book, you've got things like the island, the signal fire, the conch shell, of course, the potential of rescue and the constant fear or concern about this, the beast, denial, tribalism, and most of all, fear of the unknown, both from within and without the island. The symbols exist only for short sections within the text, and from the very start of the novel, the first one is Britishness, and how quickly this is stripped away from the children. The key symbol for you to consider is Lord of the Flies, and who or what is the Lord of the Flies? Piggy's broken glasses and Jack's spears, and also fruit trees. So with the basics out of the way, another thing I want you to add at the front, somewhere near the front of your novel, is the types of readings that are available to you as a reader, how you are interpreting this text. So all of the themes, symbols and motifs still hold true, but it's up to you to decide which one of these readings you think most closely resembles how you interpret the allegory and the story elements of The Lord of the Flies. So is it a psychological reading? Is this more about people and the way they interact in groups? Does it say more about everyone in everyday life and the way that they interact? Or do you take a religious reading where each of these elements represents something from a particular religion that you're aware of? This is of course a less likely reading for you to take based on the world's current events and the way that religion is going away from people. But back at the time, it may have been something more fruitful for you to explore as an alternate reading, if nothing else. So is it a social reading? Is it saying something about the world we live in, politics, or the world of the time? Is it political? Do each of the children, each of the characters in each of the groups represent some form of politics or some political grouping or some particular political party perhaps? Do you take an ethical reading? Do you consider the right and the wrong of what the children did and how evil deeds or sin perhaps emerged into the text? Do you consider it as an ethical reader, as an audience? Or do you take a colonialist reading, which is basically considering colonization? The white people come to a land and they make it the way they want it to be. Consider Australia as your case in point example. Or do you read it as a coming of age story? Is this something that all children go through where they explore, they play violent games perhaps, and then finally they grow up into an adult who is none of the things that were necessary to build who they were beforehand? So just keep these readings in mind, and you might want to copy the symbols that I've got here into some page of your novel. For particular sections, you might want to put a symbol that section most lends itself to a reading that you will assign next to it. So maybe if someone was to be crucified in the story, you may put a religious reading symbol next to that as a reference point for you to come back to later when you're analysing the text in more detail. So just to give you a bit of a foothold in the narrative, here are some character allegories for you to consider or to deny as you go through the text and understand it better. So Ralph is democracy in government. He's always trying to see what everyone thinks and get on board with what people are agreeing with and put in place structures to support this. Piggy as a character represents intellectualism and science. He's trying to find the best way forward, he's trying to innovate, and he's trying to make technological breakthroughs on the island. Jack represents fascism and dictatorships. He's the leader of his group and there's no democracy needed, there's no inclusive policies. It's simply he's the leader and he's got a very strict policy on the way he runs his group. So Simon has been considered the aspect of religion, or the apostle Simon Peter, or just innocence itself. And again, it's up for debate and up for your discussion and your decision as to how you place Simon and what is his role in the allegory. And then just again, some intertextual references to consider. There's always intertextuality in texts. And again, you might want to add this to a page someplace in your novel. And when these texts are referred to, you might want to just add a symbol or write the title of the text there So again, you can refer back to it during later analysis. So the first is the Boy's Own Companion, which is sort of a dolly magazine for males, young males back at the time, and it sort of was full of sort of outdoorsy, how to create tools, how to make things, games that young boys could and should play. So the island, the Coral Island and Robinson Crusoe are all very similar, sort of shipwreck, trapped on a tropical island type motif stories, and The Heart of Darkness is somewhat different in the sense that it's more of an Orientalist type tale where the white man explores into the jungle and meets many challenges there. And lastly, and almost inevitably, the Bible is one of the intertextual references made throughout. So again, just have your ears pricked up for the sort of things that seem biblical in nature, and try and put a mark next to these so you can refer back to them in later analysis. So I've hoped this annotation guide gives you sort of bit of a foothold into what you'll be looking for as you read the text, and give you some symbols to annotate as you read through. Again, try not to be too detailed when you do this and just keep it quite rough. You probably want to be annotating maybe once every 4 or 5 pages, and only the things that are very important. And lastly, remember it's an allegory, so just keep in mind that everything that you experience as a reader can and probably will be part of an allegory and will be symbolic of something else. So any object, any event, and any person could symbolize something else, and your job is to try and interpret and work out for yourself what you think the allegory is trying to say, and also what is the author's message. Good luck.